So I want to just, from the beginning, kind of say from a medical perspective, there's kind of two kinds of illnesses. There's the illnesses that have a name, the traditional illnesses like diabetes or hypertension. There is fractures, and there's appendicitis. And then there is the much larger amount of illnesses that really go without a name, where the people feel they have lost their zest, they lost their enthusiasm, they lost their sex drive, they lost their joy, they don't dance anymore, they don't sing anymore. They're still living, but they're living sort of like a half-life. And our experience, of course, with the patients that we see is that every patient that we see is in that category. The main symptom, if I would put it in two words, is loss of zest. So it's not that people are suicidal, they just have lost the vibrancy of life, the color, the smells, the excitement, the sensuality of it. And we see that everywhere where we look, we see the same picture. I visit a lot of other colleagues and other practices, both here in the US, Canada, and in Europe, and see the same picture there. And so we, over the years, tried to distill down what is it really that has changed in illness and what is causing this strange state that we're in, that we're observing worldwide. And we really were able to distill it down to just a few factors. The main one being people have increasing numbers of chronic infections. We don't see the acute pneumonia very often or the acute staph infection. Yeah, those exist. They usually end up in the hospital, and the hospitals are doing a good job with the acute stuff. But chronic infections are even denied by the medical community that they exist. Chronic Lyme disease, chronic mycoplasma infections, chronic Epstein-Barr infections. They're given sort of like a sideline in the teaching and the medical community, and are not giving their true place because they seem to be active in almost everybody that we see. Chronic mold infection, chronic parasite infestation. Those things have been extremely rare when I graduated from medical school, and now it's our everyday discovery in our patients that are chronically ill that they have these things. And so when we look deeper, what is it that has changed in the last 15, 20 years that these chronic infections have become so prevalent? And what we discovered is very simple. It's the exposure to electromagnetic fields. The only thing that parallels the exponential increase in in chronic neurological illness, with the low-grade depression, the insomnia, the muscle aches and pains, and the fatigue, and the strange neurological symptoms with tingling, numbness, vibration in the body. That increases exponentially. The number of children to be diagnosed autistic doubles every 5 years now. There's no more an issue, well, are we overdiagnosing it? No, it doubles every 5 years. The only thing that parallels that increase is the increased exposure to man-made electromagnetic fields, largely in the high frequency range.
Just for the benefit of people who aren't fully aware, in what walks of life nowadays could you expect to encounter microwaves?
Microwaves are used instead of radio waves for all communication systems. Your mobile telephone or cell phone uses microwaves. The microwave towers are almost on every street corner. Along the motorway you have the emergency services, microwave transmitters. Yeah. Microwaves are now everywhere, and microwaves succeeded radio waves because microwaves will penetrate buildings, that they will go through concrete, brick, anything, whereas radio waves won't. You need an aerial on the roof for radio waves, but for microwaves you don't. They will just go straight through your house. And of course what people don't understand is if they're going straight through your house, they're also going straight through you.
The electromagnetic spectrum goes all the way from the things that drive our radios to the ones that are in outer space that are clearly very damaging, X-rays, gamma rays, UV. The microwave spectrum right here includes cell phones, microwave ovens, cordless phones, and Wi-Fi. The difference is this: they all use a similar frequency, namely the frequency of about 800 megahertz to 2400 megahertz, or 0.8 gigahertz to 2.4 gigahertz. The power of a microwave oven is 1,000 watts. That can boil a cup of water in a minute. The power of a cell phone is much less than 1 watt, and it was thought for a long time that therefore it had no biological impact. That is not the case. The biological impact of cell phone radiation is not related to its power. It's not related to its power. It is, in fact, quite weak. It is related to its erratic nature of the signal and its ability to disrupt resonance and interfere with DNA repair. And I'm going to show you some of the reasons why scientists believe that that is the most plausible theory for understanding the wide array of health impacts that pulsed digital signals from cell phones can have today. This is a really important illustration, and this was developed by the Greek researchers, showing the complexity of the signal. Signals have frequency or pace, they have amplitude or power, they have the pulse or the beats, they have intensity, polarity, and information content. And the information content on the signals may be the most important. We don't know, but we do know that whenever you're analyzing information about cell phone radiation, you need to know all of these things. And that's an example of how complex this is. This does not fit easily into the conventional paradigm of toxicology. With the greater the dose, the greater the response. It is the intermittence, the erratic nature of the signal that may be most important biologically. So that a very weak signal, but a very weak signal that goes might be more damaging than than one that is a steady, regular signal. Think about how you, if you're trying to sleep, can sleep when there's a nice patter of rain. But if the thunder comes and shocks you, it disrupts your sleep. Well, we are in a natural state of homeostasis and resonance, and things that disturb our resonance may be more biologically important. Just to give you an idea of the complexity of a signal, look at all the things that take place in variation of intensity over a 4-second phone call. This was developed by Professor Margaritis at the University of Athens. This is showing you a tremendous variation that we get over one call.
And in fact, the men who were responsible for the creation of these devices knew exactly what was going on, hence why men like Steve Jobs would not allow his children to use iPads or iPhones. Bill Gates is also notoriously known to keep his children at a safe distance away from using these devices. So clearly they know something that you don't.
At levels of microwaves lower than you would find in a school classroom would cause 47.7% stillbirth or miscarriage in the first 7 weeks of pregnancy in women. And this is all written in my report, the whole report. Now, subsequently, other universities doing their peer-reviewed research, published and peer-reviewed in scientific journals, they found that children, because of their electrical conductivity and the excess water in their bodies that adults don't have, they absorb more microwaves. And you can get an extra 20% more damage in children than adults. So we're looking at a minimum of 57.7% miscarriage, stillbirth, or genetically damaged children from the irradiation of the ovarian eggs in school children sitting in front of Wi-Fi for 25 hours a week.
The one thing we know is this. Cell phone absorption, and these are pictures not of heat, but of the distribution of microwave energy into the head. The standard that is used for all of the cell phones in the world today, all of the 5.5 billion cell phones today, set based on a guy who was at the 90th percentile of military recruits in 1997, right? Standard anthropomorphic mannequin called SAM for short. This is the difference in exposure to the young brain. And is again, this is not heat, this is simply exposure of radio frequency energy into the brain. Now, these data were again provided by our colleagues in Niels Kuster and Andreas Christ and have been published, but these have not been, and I want to share them with you. This is showing exposure into the fetus. This is a 7-month-old, a 9-month-old, right? You see the exposures, phone out dark, coming in, and you see the exposure gets pretty much through during pregnancy if the phone is held right over the abdomen. That is why, by the way, the BlackBerry comes with a very clear warning. Do not keep near the pregnant abdomen, and don't keep near the abdomen of teenagers. Of course, when someone goes from age 19 to 20, I'm not sure what the presumption is there. But that is what the advice is with smartphones. Don't keep near the pregnant abdomen. These are data from the same group showing distributions of radio frequency energy, microwave radiation into the head of a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, looking at 900 megahertz at the tilted and at the touch position, right? You can see that the exposure gets pretty much through the brains. Remember the ads I showed you at the beginning. This is the 1800 megahertz, and the distribution is slightly different. It's actually greater with the 900 but you see that you're getting complete exposure. That is because the skull of a child is thinner, their brains contain more fluid, they will more readily absorb microwave energy.
So, at least until proven otherwise, it's recommended that men with fertility issues may not want to keep their cell phones in their front pants pocket in close proximity to their testicles. Even when not in use, cell phones emit radiation to keep pinging their location, though the main exposure is during talk mode, where it may still remain in the pocket thanks to headsets these days. And then what happens when you have it in proximity to other common metal objects? Here's a cross-section at crotch level. There's the phone. You may have a metal zipper, key ring in your pocket. When all 3 objects were added, the SAR, the amount of radiation absorbed into the testicles, was generally increased, even approximately doubled. But that's only a problem if the radiation does actually damage sperm. How hard is it to just design a study where you just wave a cell phone over some human sperm in a petri dish to see if it's an issue? And here we go. Significantly more DNA fragmentation in sperm exposed to cell phone radiation, starting within an hour of exposure. Such a dramatic effect that they suggest women might not want to pocket their cell phones for a few days after trying to get pregnant so as to not put the sperm at further risk.
Now, I want to just show you a little bit about sperm, because it's something that's not widely appreciated in this country. I'm showing you now a summary of what's been done in 7 different laboratories around the world, most notably Australia, the Cleveland Clinic. They've taken samples of sperm from men and put them into 2 different test tubes, cell phone exposed and not exposed. And you can see here fairly robust results in terms of vitality and motility. Exposed sperm are die about 3 times faster, and they have 3 times more damage to their mitochondrial DNA, as measured here. And this is work from Sir John Aiken's laboratory at Cambridge, trained andrologist who directs the National Centre for Research on this in Australia. This is other work from the Aiken group of showing a very significant effect on reduced motility and vitality of sperm, and interestingly, a very much greater effect at lower doses, lower levels of absorption of radio frequency microwave radiation, right? Really important. It's one of the reasons why that warning is on the iPhone, not to keep the phone in your pocket. This is work from the Cleveland Clinic, where Professor Agarwal, who's written more than 400 articles, noticed that men coming into his fertility clinic who were having problems tended to carry a lot of devices on their hips. I wore a lot of devices on my hips for years. So did David Servan-Schreiber. It's convenient. Now, if I have it on my hip, I have it on airplane mode. This is what they were reported in the men. Those who kept phones on in their pockets or on their hip for 4 hours a day had about 40 to 50% of the sperm count of those who reported very little use. Now you would get almost no man that would report no use of a phone. But this was published in 2008.
You know, don't wear the cell phone. You guys, don't wear that cell phone in your pants pocket, because that, you know where that goes. It goes straight. It lowers your sperm count within, 35 seconds, and even change the form of the sperm. So a lot of infertility is happening, and actually cell phone is big time. Prostate cancer, you know, there's a lot of things that can happen. So you gotta be careful. Don't wear it on your body. So now you need a man bag.
So what Anna just referred to was a study done at Yale University that we were all stunned with and thought maybe it was faulty, that when a man or a boy puts a cell phone in his pocket and it's near his testes, within 30 to 35 seconds, 40% of the sperm is inactive. But it was reconfirmed by Exeter University in England 2 years ago. Same exact numbers, so that's a done deal. When you have two not only reputable but world-class universities with world-class researchers saying it, that's it. Number two, you may want to look on the archives of the Real Truth About Health conference and look up America's leading authority, Dr. Deborah Davis, and watch her at one of our conferences we held years ago in New York City. She stunned the audience. We all gasped when she showed pictures of a rare form of cancer created by cell phones that young ladies were putting in their ears. And right where the battery was right where the cancer is. So this is not a maybe, possibly, and what you're hearing today is extreme. You're extreme if you don't believe what we're saying.
Now, the real problem comes, so you have a child that could be born genetically damaged, but the real problem comes when you become pregnant. If you are a teacher or a mature student and you become pregnant, because the embryo inside your womb, in the first 100 days, all of those 400,000 eggs are forming in your embryo, your child's ovaries. So your child could be born with genetically damaged eggs. And the main thing about the eggs in the ovaries of your child is that they have absolutely no protection. It hasn't been developed yet. We have a natural protection against microwaves. It was developed since the Stone Age against thunderstorms and massive amounts of radiation coming into our body. But in your embryo, your uterus, in the fetus, where your child is developing for the first 100 days, in the ovaries, the eggs do not have that protection. So they are at maximum risk from radiation. And for the first month or so, you wouldn't even know you were pregnant. You wouldn't even be taking precautions. That is the main danger area. So you give birth to a daughter, but her ovaries are now contaminated. She may be normal, she may be genetically damaged, but her ovaries are at the most risk. So when your daughter grows up and she becomes pregnant and has a baby, this is where one of these eggs will be fertilized and come out. So the real damage here is your grandchildren. That is where it is going to show most. And we already see this in animals that have reproductive cycles of a year or 2 years or 3 years. We're already seeing this, and it has been published by veterinary schools and vets and scientists, so we know this happens.
You raised some very, very interesting points there, not least the disappearance of the bees, the colony collapse. Are they linked to the mobile phone industry?
Yes, without a shadow of a doubt, and I'll tell you why. There are numerous papers now from beekeeping professors and scientists, and there is a brilliant mathematical paper which I read. That everything about the poor bee is designed to be irritated by microwaves. The distance between the antenna, the size of the brain, the size of the body, they will all suffer resonance or unnatural vibration from microwave irradiation. The immune systems will collapse. The directional finding mechanism of the bee is destroyed.
Mr. Secretary General, on the basis of the precautionary principle, I urge you to have these EMF emitting devices removed immediately from these buildings and to call a halt to any rollout of 5G at UN duty stations, because 5G is designed to deliver concentrated and focused electromagnetic radiation in excess of 100 times current levels in the same way as do directed energy weapons. In line with the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, to protect, respect and remedy, 5G technologies must be subjected to an independent health and safety assessment before they are launched anywhere in the world. There is currently an international appeal signed by 237 EMF scientists from 41 nations, urging the UN and particularly the WHO to exert strong leadership in fostering the development of more protective EMF guidelines, encouraging precautionary measures and educating the public about the considerable health risks, particularly the risks to children and fetal development.